We are back. Season 4, episode 1 of JMU Sound Off is officially live. Thank you for joining us for another exciting season, not only of the show, but if we're back, that means JMU Athletics is back. And we are excited to bring you coverage all season long. I'm going to get right to it. I'm going to bring in our co-host for this season, Taylor Atkins, Michael Evangelista. Guys, it feels like we've been gone all summer, but it feels like we never went away because so much exciting stuff has happened this summer. We've got, I feel like, marriages galore. We've got new houses. We've got new shirts, obviously, looking slick in the bottom frame, Michael, with the Roback stuff. We've got.
I had to turn up for season 4.
You know, we've got all kinds of fans. I mean, what do we got? Peter Millar now. We got Roback. We obviously got our friends from Where's Woody. We've got Lululemon. Really, everybody coming into the fold. And that must mean the JMU brand is growing. Taylor Atkins, I feel like you've been on the river. I feel like you've been wrestling. You've been doing everything under the sun that is an outdoor activity because you're a great dad. You're just a good dad. Kids are playing music. Love it.
You forgot in the last 4 years, Taylor finally has internet now too.
He does have internet in Southwest Virginia.
Has the dial up.
There you go. And I just feel like so much happening in life, so much happening with the fan base as well. Hopefully the fans appreciate and see the new intro. So shout out to Andy Lynn, who's been helping us with graphics and things all basically since season 1. And he's a valuable member of our extended Sound Off family. We got producer Chandler on the other side of the screen. Big shout out to Afton Sadamon, who joined us this summer. Has been an incredible addition to the Sound Off family, doing our top 5 lists, some of the great content across our social media channels. And I want to kind of start there and just saying, last season when we took off for the summer, we really took off for the summer. We really wanted to make sure that we were engaging across the different social media channels. We added a TikTok account this summer. Obviously, a lot of growth in YouTube. Just more ways that we can bring Sound Off content to you, but also the storylines that this is really all about, because we're trying to cover more of the recruiting angle, something that Michael's done a tremendous job over many, many years. But we got a chance to have a lot of player spotlights, giving you an opportunity to get to know some of the faces and the personalities that make this program special. So thank you for your continued support. We noticed the growth. We noticed the comments that are coming in. Stay tuned. We've got some exciting things planned for this content this summer. And as we go into the fall, we're going to have giveaways from our sponsors, a lot of different ways for you to get involved, including your feedback, your comments, your questions in the show. So a lot of exciting things planned as we move into season 4. I do want to call out all of our sponsors, though, because this show is only possible because of them. Skyline Financial Partners back this year. They're going to be doing their Player of the Week. We're excited to recognize each and every week the player who stands out in that week, and we're grateful, Skyline, for joining us. SkylineFinancialPartners.com. We've got the 3 bottles of Champions Drive in the front here, right on the desk. Champions Drive tailgate bourbon. Our F lot, our P lot, some new stuff coming from Champions Drive this fall. Remember, every bottle you purchase goes to support JMU Athletics. We've got our friends from Where's Woody. Lots of great things planned with some new merchandise from them. They're going to be at tailgates this year, engaging with the fan base. We've got Your Purple Nation, Carol Bonassi. Now, I feel like there isn't a place in Virginia where Carol doesn't have a store. Stay tuned for exciting items of the week from Carol, some great deals that we're going to help promote for her side of the business. We've got Shoker Enterprises. Joe Shoker continues to be one of the most engaged and involved members of the Alpha Dogs and the Montpelier Collective and just the JMU community. We've got the Dead Meat Society. If you're looking to take your tailgating game to the next level, your grilling game, if you're somebody who loves everything with flavor and meat, Dead Meat Society, deadmeatsociety.com. Check them out. Jake Coons, so excited to have them on board. And then we have the Outdoor Kitchen Solutions. Brandon Hedrick and the team over there can take your outdoor kitchen to the next level. We've got some fun stuff planned with them as well. So that's the business stuff out of the way. Our expectations for the episode, we want to make sure that you're aware of what today's topics are going to be. We are focusing on everything related to the offensive side of the football. A lot of news and notes around that side of the football. We're also going to get into a great off-topic discussion, talking about some of the news and notes from this summer with the addition of Louisiana Tech and all of the news that has come out from that. So stay tuned for that. But guys, let's get right into it. In terms of talking about the offensive side of the football, there's a lot that's going to have to happen before we get to our season opener against Weaver State. So many different question lines and storylines. Before we get into individual, kind of position specifically, I want to go to you, Michael. You've had a chance to actually be at practice. Just maybe your high level thoughts about setting the stage for this offensive unit, a group that had a lot of success last year, had some times during the season where there were some struggles, but a unit with a lot of expectations as we move into a season that's receiving a tremendous amount of national hype, not just from the media in Virginia, but from across the country.
Yeah, before we get into the player stuff, because there's a lot to talk about, right? Wide receivers, quarterbacks, running backs. Think about this. I think we bring back all of our coaches on offense. Kennedy comes back, Sims comes back, Harper comes back, Kane and Coach Smith, which I think is probably the underrated storyline, right? You have a 9-4 season, first bowl win in program history, and now you've got all this continuity. Whether you're critical of the offense or not, I think we all have our ups and downs last year. They're all coming back, and they're all in the same system. So I think that's the first note is when I look at this team, I've been to a couple practices, everything just looks crisper, right? Looking at refinement, people know where they're supposed to be. No one is confused when everyone's heard Coach Chesney's tested and fire, compete periods. Everyone knows where they're supposed to be at every single time versus last year where it's a brand new system, brand new culture, which I think is the underrated part. So continuity is super key. But, I mean, I guess it starts with the quarterbacks, right? Yeah. Think about this. So last year, I think it's very obvious now, Dylan Morris had his fair share of injuries. We had Billy Atkins. We had Alonzo Barnett, who, by the way, let's remember this. He threw 26 touchdowns and 4 interceptions last year. Tears his ACL at the last bit of the season or last play of the season. Now we're bringing back a Matthew Sluka, who, by the way, I'm sure like everybody else, I've got the roster probably as like a previously visited website on my Chrome. In this offense, Sluka had 59 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, and ran for 38 touchdowns through 4 years at Holy Cross. So obviously FCS, but you're talking about bringing someone that knows the system inside and out. And you bring in a Camden Coleman who goes, 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions at Richmond over the last 2 years. And mind you, versus Delaware last year, which we're welcoming them to the FBS now, he had 3 touchdowns, 2 in the air, and 1 on the ground as well. So we're bringing back a ton of people-proven talent. And you've got AB3 who, based on the news, is cleared for practice. He's throwing 80-yard bombs, allegedly. He looks great, not cleared for contact yet, but talk about a variety of riches at quarterback, at least to start there.
Well, and I would say, Taylor, I know this is something we've talked offline a lot about. The fact that game 1 for Alonzo Barnett would be 9 months to the day from the injury speaks to not only the resilience that he's shown, the work ethic, but just his commitment to being present on this team, committed to making sure that he is a part of whatever journey this is going to be for this program. That to me is something that, whatever the wins and losses and the stats, obviously that's what we're all here for, but to be that willing to go through the grind that he had to do to get to this point is something that is worthy of all of our praise, regardless if he's the day one starter or where he fits in. The fact that it's even possible, I think it's impossible to overstate what kind of character that states about what he brings to the table each and every day.
Well, going with character, one of my favorite things about AB3 in this age and era of NIL and transfer portal is he's been a Duke for is it four seasons now? Am I doing that math correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, just to have any player that's a 4-year team member this time or in this era is a rarity. And he's someone that loves JMU, knows JMU, and excited to see that he is back out there practicing, that he is cleared, and that he is able to kind of learn alongside and be a leader in that quarterback room. But speaking of the quarterback room, I mean, for me, it's just the depth. And I think Michael touched on, Coach Chesney and his staff had to come in, and there were a lot of question marks of, we just need to make sure that we have personnel in the positions to be able to field a team that can compete for a conference championship. This year, the depth in some of these position groups, especially the quarterback room, the question isn't, are we going to have personnel to fill those positions? The question is, you have just a QB room full of winners, full of guys that know the system, full of people that want to be here. So you obviously have AB3. Sluka, as Michael mentioned, he was for the few games that he played last year, he was leading a UNLV team that early on was the front runner to be the G5 champion. You have Coleman, who obviously was very successful at Richmond. You have J.C. Evans, who, came in as a highly recruited athletic freak. He showed his skill in the bowl game. And then let's not leave out Blake Kendall. I mean, that's a guy that's also been with this program multiple years, has committed greatly to the practice squad. So you have a QB room full of veterans, full of leaders. You have, we read off the stat at some point last year, but it's something like 50 plus wins as a starter or in that QB room. So I'm glad that Coach Chesney and his staff, they have so many people to choose from that it really provides this QB battle it's iron sharpens iron, and everyone in that QB room is going to get better because of the people that are in it.
Well, and Mike, I was going to ask you, obviously they bring different things to the table. Anybody who's taken 5 minutes on YouTube can see the videos from Matthew Sluka, a 28-9 record as a starting quarterback. But he does it in a way that is a little different maybe than what you typically see. He is not afraid to lower his shoulder and run through people. And he brings a lot of energy to the sideline as well. When he trucks somebody, running over a linebacker, that tends to, resonate and provide energy to the entire sideline. What have you seen from him in the past that has you excited outside of obviously just the raw talent, the record, but for what fans can expect to see, whether he's the starter or someone who's brought into some packages, maybe in the red zone or other ways, because regardless of who the starter, we know from previous seasons of watching this team, you're going to need multiple quarterbacks. There's going to be a play where somebody's going to have to come out of the game. There's going to be different scenarios where you need a break. This can be something, what he brings is very unique and probably hard for opposing defenses to game plan for.
One thing that always stood out when Coach Chesney talks about Sluka and the 4 years he was there is how competitive he was, right? He had such a competitive fire. He brought it on game day, similar to a couple of years ago when we had a Jordan McLeod, where we would hear stories about maybe he wasn't the best practice player, didn't bring it every day. I imagine probably Sluka's that way, but we saw what happened with Cloud, became a all-conference player, offense player, you name it. I'm not saying that's the trajectory for Sluka. That's something I appreciate, right? Someone that turns it on during the big game. Like you said, he's 28-9. He was a Walter Payton Award winner, finalist. I don't know if he won it at all, which is equivalent to the FCS Heisman, but he brings it. I will say this: if you probably looked and go watch Sluka and Barnett and Camden Coleman just throw it around the field, no helmets on, you'll probably think, man, Camden Coleman looks really good. Like in terms of like a pure pocket quarterback, he can run. And then you look at Sluka, he's got a little bit of a different delivery, kind of Ben DiNucci-esque at times, but he's a guy that gets it done. I would encourage everyone, go to YouTube, watch his game against Boston College. Like when things break down in the pocket, we talk a lot about like Barnett. Barnett's super athletic, but he wasn't the best scrambler, right, at that. But then Sluka was always keeping plays active, right, which I think was really exciting. And we'll get into the O-line and all that stuff, but I think the best part about this is the wealth of riches that they have on the outside too, at running back and receiver, and I'm excited to kind of get into some of those pieces as well. And yeah, J.C. Evans, right? Like won our first bowl game, 6'5", 230-pound quarterback, 3-star recruit, probably one of the highest rated quarterbacks we've ever had come to JMU. He's our fourth-string quarterback right now. Maybe he comes in. And for any of the NCAA football fans, I don't know about you guys, but I put Sluka in the 2 split running back set, and I run that triple option every time. I get 5 yards whenever I need to. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some of that as well.
And by the way, when he scores, you see streamers and Duke Dog in the game now. Something else that happened this offseason.
Duke Dog is phenomenal. I can't believe we haven't talked about that. Duke Dog is pretty phenomenal. Let's be real.
Major kudos to EA Sports for that. But Taylor, I know you had one more thing on Sluka.
Well, I pulled up before the show. I've had a couple of folks that have been talking to me. They've asked, if Sluka ends up having significant playing time at quarterback, one of their big concerns is, they're like, well, he doesn't throw the ball a lot. He's not a traditional quarterback. And so what it caused me to do is I went back and I pulled up some stats that I have here. So this is his last year at Holy Cross. He was 122 completions for 197, 62 completion percentage, 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns in the air. He also had 186 carries, 1,200 yards on the ground, 9 TDs rushing. If you pull up a certain Rodney Landers, 127 completions out of 203 attempts for a 62 completion percentage, almost identical there. 13 TDs in the air. Matthew Sluka beat him by 7 on there. And then Rodney had 221 carries for 1,200 yards and 12 TDs. That's very similar to Sluka's 186 carries for 1,200 yards and 9 TDs. So all that to be said, I don't think anyone that looks back to 2008 and looked at the Rodney Landers years were like, yeah, but that offense just wasn't very productive because they should have been passing the ball more. There is the type of player that Sluka is. That position exists in college football now. And I like what Michael or John or one of y'all mentioned, just the variety of styles of quarterbacks that are in that room, from running to dual threat to passing to pocket passer. There's just a lot of excitement. And the coaching staff now has a variety of options of directions they can take this team versus last year. You're just trying to get people in the positions in addition to really setting down what is your culture, what is your tradition, what is your environment that you're going to set forth for this team.
Well, and I did want to mention just briefly Camden Coleman for the very fact that during media day, Chesney was very direct, possibly obviously because he didn't want to give so much praise to one quarterback that it would tip off who his starter is, but really wanted to highlight all of the quarterbacks in this roster, including Camden Coleman, because they've done it in live fire. Camden Coleman has won a lot of games at Richmond. He also comes here to JMU with 2 wide receivers that he has familiarity with from Richmond in Landon Ellis and Nick DeGennaro. That is an incredible gift to him and something that gives him an option to get more comfortable in this offense because he has familiarity on the roster. I feel like that is massive for him. So regardless of who's your starter, if somebody does, need an injury or need to take a day off, he highlighted that was a real concern last year, is they didn't feel they had somebody that could come in and step in right away when Alonzo was dealing with some injuries. So that has to give this staff confidence. It has to give this staff the feeling that they have the ability to be more versatile in terms of what offense they roll out each and every week, knowing that there are guys who are tested under fire. They have real game tape on. And that is something I know everyone in the fan base should be very excited about, because at the very least, that there's not just one person who can do this. There's many, many quarterbacks. And I know there's old adages, if you have multiple quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I think this is a unique situation and something this staff, from a recruiting perspective, should be very we should be very happy with what they put together, because I think they saw last year you have to have multiple options, and really intrigued because I think this is an open-ended storyline that may evolve as we go throughout the season, because again, who knows what Alonzo's availability is going to be for week 1. I do want to transition now to the running backs. Obviously, if there's a room on this roster that I think is worthy of the hype, both internally and externally, and is this running backs room. There are some names on this group that need no introduction. Obviously, George Pettaway, we all saw what he was capable of last year, had 980 yards rushing, 6.05 yards, which was a league best per carry last season. Plus, was a good threat in the kickoff game. Michael, introduce this room, and if there's somebody new in this group, go kind of through some of the additions that have come into the group, if somebody hasn't been following it like we do all summer long.
Well, I was going to say, if there is one room that has any fan just extremely excited about the season, it has to be running back. We were talking about, Taylor was bringing up the different styles of quarterbacks. Think about the different styles of running backs we have. We know what George Pettaway is. We've seen sort of the potential of Ayodele, who was a 1,000-yard rusher in North Texas. You've got a Wayne Knight that's coming back, right? Like Wayne Knight was, remember which game was it? It was when we played Arkansas State. He was a phenom out of the backfield, catching passes from Centeio. And then I'll read this stat for you. Our 4th string, or maybe 5th string, we'll see. Oh, we also have Joby Mallory, who was a former he had a 300-yard rushing game at Portland State. He had his first year with the program last year. He's like 240 pounds, runs a 4.5. And I'll read this. Our 4th string, maybe 5th string running back, has a career of 2,092 rushing yards and is an all-time program leader with 44 rushing touchdowns. That guy is Jordan Fuller, who comes in from Holy Cross. And what do they have his stats? I think he's 5'11", 229, 230 pounds. I don't know. There was that picture that was going viral on social media with him moving in. I think he's going to be a difference maker for us. Right. So you're looking at guys that are coming in. These are 22, 23, sometimes 24-year-olds playing in the backfield. And then the question is, you only have one football. But what I like about this offense is, Coach Kennedy, Coach Chesney has always talked about being multiple on offense and finding matchups. So I don't think we'll see we'll have one running back in the backfield. Maybe we'll see Pettaway in the slot catching a jet sweep, or Wayne Knight motioning inside and outside, or hell, maybe Jordan Fuller and Joby Mallory are the team in the 4th quarter when they just need to grind a game out. I think you've got an exciting amount of experience, physical maturity back there, and you've got some breakaway speed with Petaway and Wayne Knight that I know they could take it the distance every time.
Well, and if there's any questions about the quarterback position and who's healthy and who's going to start, now, obviously the best way to get any quarterback comfortable is with a solid running game. And I can't think of a room that's better positioned to do that than this. I remember last season I went back and looked at our first episode. One of the things we were all very excited about was Io and what we were going to see for him and his potential. I noticed in his interview with Dave Riggert and some of his other conversations, he's healthy now. He's been able to get his body in a position where he feels comfortable. He feels like he has that extra gear back. Taylor, come to you. Like, what are your expectations for the potential of him now being able to possibly have what we all hoped we'd see last year in that kind of two-headed monster with so much talent behind even them? That really sets this room up to be a force in the Sun Belt, and probably why we're receiving the type of attention that we are, both within the conference and from national media who look at this team.
Yeah, I walked away from that Charlotte game really impressed with Io. You know, some of the numbers didn't really show it, but it was some of those little things, some of the extra effort, the extra burst of speed, the power. I was really excited about him coming out of the Charlotte game. But, you know, we talked about how deep this running back room is, and that's going to be needed because we were down two of our top running backs fairly early in the season last year. And, you know, with having 5 guys on the roster here that have participated or started at the Division I level and played significant time, because, you know, even when we went down 2 running backs, you know, some of those guys were playing banged up in those games and they just couldn't take hit after hit after hit. So to have such depth and such veteran experience at that position, and like Michael said, they all bring something out. If you want to sling it out to the slot, if you need to run the sweep, if you need to blow, you know, really just pound it down the middle, you have running backs for all those different positions. And then there's the blocking aspect that comes into play with the running back role. You have guys that can protect the quarterback in those situations. And so I think, you know, just going over these first 2 groups with the quarterbacks and the running backs, you're going to have defenses that are really going to struggle to how are they going to prepare, because I do think you can change up and diversify the game to plan so much because you have so many different resources and assets in these positions. So the coaches have a lot to work with. I think that's it. This is going to be good for us in this season.
Awesome. Well, I would be really intrigued to see what running backs we use in the passing game this year work, because I think that if you look at the offense last year, that was one of the things we had a lot of success for, was using those backs out of the backfield. And then again, this plays into the strength of the various options we have at quarterback. So that's the room personally for me. If you were to say, what are you the most excited about this roster? It's definitely the running backs. So good discussion about the quarterbacks and running backs. Those are 2 key positions, obviously, for any offensive success. We did want to pause and before we get into the rest of this offensive unit to do a little bit of an off-topic discussion. It's really not that off-topic because it's been something that has really taken up the bulk of maybe some of the Twitter dialogue and stuff over the last couple of weeks, is the addition of a new school to the Sun Belt, bringing in Louisiana Tech. The reaction to this was loud, to say the least, on social media. I don't think it's unfair to say that the bulk of the reaction from not only the JMU fan base, but from really the entire Sun Belt East was negative. Guys, I just kind of want to go there in terms of what your reactions were to this and the emergence now of kind of this interesting dynamic of a East versus West kind of battle that's going back, is that the schools in the East don't really see the addition that this brings to the conference, whereas the schools in the West obviously may have a slightly different perspective now that Texas State has made their way to the new Pac. Is it Pac-12? I'm still what the names of
Pac-9. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think they even know at this point. I'll go to you, Mike. What was your initial reaction when you saw the kind of lead up to it, and then when the announcement was made? There's a lot of dynamics at play here.
Yeah, I think the announcement was relatively polarizing, right? I think from my perspective, I looked at it from, okay, what does the Sun Belt want to be? The brand of the Sun Belt, does it elevate the brand of the program, et cetera? And I looked at it too. I was like, man, 3 Louisiana schools. Like, I know we want to be regional, but I was like, I mean, one of them I think is going to be bankrupt soon. The other one has had some alleged financial problems as well. Now we're bringing Louisiana Tech, who I think this is their 2nd round now in the Sun Belt after moving up to Conference USA, and there was a lot of chatter with the AD. So that being said, from a conference standpoint, I thought it was really interesting of like, okay, does this elevate the brand? Does this make us more attractive for new TV sponsorships? All of that was going through my head. I'll say this, from a JMU standpoint, I don't think this means anything.
Yep.
right? Like I don't think it means anything to us. If anything, it's another. I'll put it down on paper. If we see them next year, I'll say we'll be 1 or 2 touchdown favorites for sure. But I think from our standpoint, doesn't really matter. It's business as usual. I'm just thinking of when these TV contracts come up for renewal. I think in 2028 or whenever they are for ESPN. Does Louisiana Tech raise the bar and allow us to fund and then generate revenue, all that good stuff? And Taylor, I know from your days at UTSA, I know Louisiana Tech was your number one rival. So I
worked at UTSA, by the way. I worked there.
We're going to have a tally for how many times we bring that up. That Taylor did not bring it up today, so that doesn't count. So,
yeah, I mean, I look at this situation from 3 different perspectives. The first perspective is I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I mean, the program does not have a big fan base. I've been there. The town and the surrounding region doesn't really bring anything to the table. The entire ULM, La Tech, Louisiana, I have a little bit more respect for because, there have been times where they've had baseball in the top 10, softball in the top 10. I think I remember probably 10 plus years ago, them in East Carolina played in the Superdome for a bowl game, and they had 50,000 plus people. Like Louisiana, they have some value to the conference. They have some tradition and some brand power. But ULM is a school that, as it's been pointed out, the smallest budget in FBS. They're looking to get cuts. Their AD is stepping away. And part of this La Tech deal was the value that it helps with schools like ULM and Louisiana. So, again, the first perspective I take is just you call a spade a spade. There's not a lot of value that this brings to the conference. I don't know if it's as detrimental as or as harsh as some people think. I just don't think it does anything to move the needle. Perspective 2 is that the only constant is change. And, with these conferences, it wouldn't surprise me for JMU and a handful of these other schools to be in something different in 5 years. And I don't say that with any inside knowledge, nor do I expect it, nor do I even want it. I mean, I really like the Sun Belt. I'm just saying that there is so much change. And when one domino falls, it causes a ripple effect. And you just don't know where that effect is. I do think the schools in the East recognize the value that they have, the brand power they have when it comes to the Sun Belt. And I'm specifically talking about Marshall, App, Old Dominion, and Coastal Carolina. Those schools, they have done a lot to really put the Sun Belt on a pedestal these last few years. So I guess the other reason I'm not overly concerned or looking too much into it is I just don't think it's as permanent. I think JMU is going to always have multiple options because of what we bring to the table and the regionality of some of our peers. I just think there's always going to be other options down the road. And then the third perspective, and this is coming more from the industry side when I work there, is, there's just always so much more that is not known by the public and by the media and by the fan bases. And, I think the world of Matt Rohn. I think the world of our administration, and not just him. I think fairly highly of a lot of the schools that I just listed in the East and their administration, what they've done to grow their brands. So there is a reason why things have happened the way they have, and I mean, while I don't love it, I just don't. The sky's not falling. It's one of those things where I'm more apathetic to the situation. It just doesn't really change a whole lot for me. I would have obviously selfishly have loved if it was like an East Carolina or something along those lines. But those are pipe dreams. And there's not to say, that us in East Carolina don't end up in a conference someday in the future either.
Well, I was going to.
Did you find it interesting though? Like, when Louisiana Tech came in, the whole point was we were going to help ULM, balance their budget. We're going to help Louisiana. And then, now they're going to cut. I think their budget's $19 million. They're going to go down to potentially around 12. It feels kind of like Keith Gilgott sold a bag of bad goods. I don't know.
For me, the way I look at it is, I'm like, I'm with Michael on this. Something's not adding up, but I think the things that are not adding up are just things that we don't know. So there's part of me that's like, I'm reading between the lines. This is weird. And I just think there's a lot more to the story that will eventually continue to play out. I mean, the Pac. I think there's the Pac-12 with 8 teams, 9 if you count the Gonzaga thing. There's still things to be worked out of there. Memphis is obviously desperate to do something because they're offering $250 million just to be out of a conference, which is a good conference to be. So there's so many other dominoes to fall that I just am saying that not only do I not know where I don't think where JMU is now is ultimately where JMU ends up, and that doesn't mean out of the Sun Belt, in the Sun Belt, doesn't mean anything. It's just JMU has positioned itself with selling out season tickets, with looking to add to the stadium, with continuing to sell out games against Weber State. We sold out Gardner-Webb last year. I'm more in the position of I don't know what's in the future, but I kind of don't care because we've positioned ourselves so well that I know we're going to be a valued and highly desired brand regardless of what the situation is.
Well, I do want to add one thing, though. The one part about the East versus West dynamic that I feel like is undeniable is knowing what I know about the media. If there are Sunbelt athletic directors that, while off the record, are still willing to talk to Shea Metlin and Dave Schultz's of the world and to share their disappointment and kind of the, hey, we told you so, I do think that speaks to a broader sense of unease or at least discomfort with where the conference is going in terms of direction. And I thought it was interesting that Keith Gill did come back out and say, hey, we would potentially be open to adding 2 more teams. And, whether that's an Ohio or Western Kentucky, I don't want this. Obviously, I think I've been pretty clear upfront about it. Could it be a school like Liberty, continues to use their financial leverage that they have and facilities and everything that comes with it to try to, back down or maybe force their way into a conference like the Sun Belt? I still think that's probably unlikely just based off the makeup of the Sun Belt and who our athletic directors are and presidents, but that's something that's out there. I know they're lobbying for it. But then you look at schools like in East Carolina, who we did do at least our due diligence on. If a Memphis leaves the American Conference, if you lose a school like Tulane, the American looks a lot different to a media partner like ESPN. And that's where, when you get to that 2030 timeframe, when you are seeing conferences like the ACC and the Sun Belt and the American all having their TV deals come up, there are multiple reports on Chris Vanini's of the world and ESPN talking about schools like Virginia Tech trying to position themselves to get out of the ACC. And I know they're not alone. As Taylor said, to wrap it, there's a lot of change that's going to come, and I'm sure JMU is well down the road in terms of doing their due diligence, and the best medicine and the best way that we can kind of set ourselves up for success is to just keep winning, just keep enhancing our facilities, just keep being creative in terms of how we generate revenue to this program. We saw the announcement about the bookstore this week, allowing people to kind of roll up to help support student athletics. All of those moves, bringing in a general manager to help facilitate the growth of this program and the direction that we're going in. A lot of things happening that position this team. We have a brand new basketball arena in place that will be attractive to any conference, whether that's a new conference that's formed by schools in the East, whether it's continuing to enhance the Sun Belt. Lots of different options, and I think we're well positioned for all of them.
And to add to that too, some conversations I get into, people say, well, do you think JMU would be in the ACC someday, or I don't want to be in this conference? I would try to. My biggest pushback is don't get caught up with the brand and the name. I mean, you have a lot of Texas State people saying, "Oh, we're big time now. We're in the Pac-12." Well, the Pac-12 it's not a power conference.
It's the Mountain West. That's what it is. Yeah,
and for that matter, we all kind of dog on Conference USA. This. I mean, I think objectively, it's the worst of the G5 teams, but. Conference USA 15 years ago had Houston, had Cincinnati, had Louisville, had Central Florida. So that's where and to be honest, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have wanted to be in the Sun Belt. The teams that were in the Sun Belt, I would have wanted to have no part. So that's where I say, there's a scenario, I guess, maybe down the road where JMU's in the ACC after 8 or 10 ACC teams leave. Well, then it's not, so what I'm more focused on, and I think what our administration's focused on, is whatever brand or conference JMU's associated with, it's peer institutions, regionality, fan bases that not only have a lot in common, but they show up, they support their team. And that's why, as we speak right now, the West, we can talk about the West. I love that we are in an Eastern division with Marshall, App, Old Dominion, Coastal, Georgia Southern, Georgia, even Georgia State. I know they have some trouble getting people to their games, but it's an easy drive. It's a great venue. I'm kind of today we're great place. I don't know what tomorrow brings. It will be great as well.
You bring such a mature mindset, Taylor. People forget that 12 years ago, the Sun Belt had what, Idaho, New Mexico State, which we obviously said we're not joining that.
Right.
And then I had another point. I forgot what. Oh, we've sold out all our season tickets.
Yeah.
After
Everyone put that challenge out in the spring. Was like, hey, if you ever want to see stadium enhancement, stadium additions, you got to do your part and sell out tickets. And that was started with the season tickets. Now I know we're close to selling out single game tickets, but that's a message that you're going to send not only to Matt Rome, but to the board and the donors that, hey, this is worth funding, because it was an open-ended question. If we would continue to do this when we reach the FDS level.
I'm not going to say the name. It rhymes with Schmibberty, but they've never, according to their own numbers, had a sellout. And they've had BYU, they've had Tech, they've had these big names. We're over here selling out Gardner Webb. We're probably going to sell out Weber State. I mean, we're selling. I think JMU fans just take it for granted that not only are we selling out these games, but we're selling out these games where we could probably sell another 5,000 or 10,000 tickets. And so the attendance number of JMU's games, it's not even reflective of what the demand is. And I do say, we ended one of our last episodes last year where I listed off that stat that, it's down to 2 teams, Boise State and us, that haven't had a losing season in 22, 23 years. JMU fans need to don't let your foot off the gas pedal. We need to continue this success is not always guaranteed. It needs to be appreciated every year that we have it. And again, based on some of the position groups we've talked about and that we're going to talk about here and everything that's going on at JMU, we're looking for another great year of JMU football.
Awesome. Well, good discussion, guys. And we did want to go back to looking at the offensive side of the football and kind of wrap up what other players who are going to make a real key impact and whether this team is going to be successful or not. And one of those groups that I know has received a lot of praise from the coaching staff, and in the interviews we're hearing from the Dave Riggerts and the Katie Harpers of the world, is the wide receiver room, as well as the tight end group. Michael, introduce us to some of the new additions to this room. Obviously, we mentioned earlier in the episode the 2 receivers from the University of Richmond in Landon Ellis and Nick DeGennaro. But what else can fans expect to see when they arrive at Bridgeport Stadium in just 20 days?
Well, if anyone's been listening to any of the other podcasts or any of Dave Rigger's interviews, it was clear that last year we had 3 wide receivers for the entire year. We had OD, Cam Ross, and Yamir Knight, which were, I think none of them were over 5'8". They were outside receiver or inside receivers playing outside. And once one goes down, who do we go to, right? We had a young Dylan Williams. We obviously had Taylor Thompson, who's fantastic. So I think Coach Chesney and co did a fantastic job just really reloading the room with, once again, proven talent. And let's talk about it. Significant size, right? Isaiah Alston comes from Iowa State. He spent 4 years at Army. I think he's 6'4", 215. We haven't had a guy like that since, I'm gonna throw a name out there. Remember Riley Stapleton? Yeah. 2017, 2018, 2019, jump ball guy. Think of a more athletic version of that, right? You look at, we talked about earlier, Landon Ellis and Nick DeGennaro, which were number 1 and number 2 at Richmond the past couple of years. They combined for 100 and, let's see here, if I'm doing my math right, they combined for 232 catches and almost 3,000 yards and 21 touchdowns in their career. Landon Ellis, by the way, 6'2", 210 pounds, thick kid. Nick DeGennaro from Long Island, I think he's 6'1", 200 pounds, started his career at Maryland. Another great big kid, 24 years old, physically mature. And then we roll out the top here. I think it's just, once again, right, it's a wealth of riches. You got Braden Wislowski from Maryland, who was our top kick returner. I think they caught him at 23 miles an hour when he ran that kick return for a touchdown last year. Brings some good size. He's about 5'10", 5'11", twitchy. Then you got a freshman in Mikey Scott from Pennsylvania, who was originally committed to Arizona State, I believe, commits to us. Another Rashard Davis-esque, twitchy, fast. And I think the sleeper of the group, and probably someone that had the most production over his total time in his career, Jaylon Sanchez from Villanova, a slot receiver, by the way, 6'1", 200+ pounds, 23, 24-year-old, been there, done that. I think he played versus JMU a couple times, right? When we were still, maybe our last year in the CAA. You bring in these guys that have been in big situations, right? That have been there, that they were relied to catch a third down pass. They had to score a touchdown. These are also guys that they were the number 1 target So defenses had to rotate to guard them, right? So you've got them on the same team. Now who are you going to go to, right? So I think this is why whoever plays a quarterback, right, it's sort of their job to lose in the sense of they've got weapons all around them. We just got to get it to the right player at the right time.
Well, and one thing I was going to add about the wide receiver room is there's a clear approach, and Coach Chesney mentioned this in his media day appearance, is going to the FCS and getting guys who have done that, guys who have proven it, as opposed to going to a Power 4 or Power 5 school and finding a guy who had all the stars and potential but couldn't find his way on the field. They're bringing in guys who have proven experience, who've shown they can catch the ball in real game situations under the lights. That matters, and I think sets us up for success in this room because, again, having that diversity, but also being able to look at a tape from these players and say, whoa, I can see exactly what they do when they're against an opposing defense that's not in practice, that's not in a spring ball or a summer situation. That matters, and something that has me really excited because I can look at any one of these players and go, wow, they've done it, and you can kind of see the highlight tapes and go, this has got to be a fun offense to game plan for. I know one thing Chandler talked about when he had a chance to go up to the coaches clinics and listening to Dean Kennedy's kind of methodology and how he was putting together offense. This is one of the things he mentioned being so excited about was finally having so many options to be able to game plan for.
Well, what I think is really cool is that a lot of these guys were also recruited historically by Coach Chesney. We found out very quickly Isaiah Alston was supposed to visit JMU last year, but ultimately committed to Iowa State. Nick DeGennaro was supposed to go to visit Holy Cross, and he opted to go to Maryland. And then Coach Chesney tried to get him a few times to Holy Cross, and then last year tried to get him to JMU, right? Like, it's pretty interesting. Jalen Sanchez, same way. Like, he spent the last 4 years at Villanova, was a top target for Coach Chesney at Holy Cross also. So you're thinking about guys that Chesney has recruited and scouted for years and knows exactly what their profile is and how they would fit. I think it was a really thorough job. Now, that being said, we could just be paper tigers, right? And they could be a complete flop. But I think on paper, I think they went about it the right way. And I was thinking about this. That's what I was preparing for this podcast. You look back at like the 2022 JMU roster and think about what 8-4, first year in FBS. Todd Centeio comes in, the Chris Thorntons, the Wells. Think about those players that were elite FCS players that were like, oh my gosh, I get to now prove myself at the FBS level. You look across this roster, offense and defense, we are filled with those types of players that were high level, high activity FCS players that succeeded, all conference marks. Now they're on one team. This team, I think, has a chip on their shoulders. I think personnel wise, as well as the organization. I don't know. I just get super excited just thinking about the type of people we brought in. Taylor, I feel like you're itching to say something.
Well, I mean, from the analytics side, you guys have hit on everything. And John made a good point that I was going to say. If just this is now the third position group we've reviewed, and we've talked about the number of Division I starts that these guys have under their belt. And Division I starts at successful football programs. You know, I mean, Eric O'Neill was on no one's radar last year. I think we had him on the podcast early on. And even when we had him on the podcast, I was like, who is this? Who is this guy again? And by the end of the season, I mean, he was nationally known for just being a menace to the defensive line. And so I think the depth that we have at receiver, once again, with guys that have Division I starts under their belt, just adds another level of options that this coaching staff has when putting together an offensive game plan. The only two other things I'm going to add to it is just I'm going to highlight two guys. One, the Sanchez interview that he did after practice earlier this week, where, I mean, just the confidence and the grin and say, bring your streamers, get your streamers ready. I mean, you got to be psyched when someone like that so early into the program is already buying into the program and the traditions, and just he said it with an air. It wasn't arrogance, but it was an air of confidence that just gets you excited for what this passing game can be. And then I want to give a shout out to what is arguably maybe as a fan, my fan favorite. I think he will become a fan favorite. I don't know how much of the field he's going to see this year, but my goodness, Michael Scott, he's winning over that receiver room. There's guys saying some pretty good things about him. If you haven't done so, find Michael Scott on Twitter or X and check out some of the drill videos that he does. I mean, it looks like the thing is sped up 2 or 3 times speed. The guy just has a level of athleticism and talent that I'm excited to have at JMU. And I just remember during his recruiting process, he's sharing JMU stuff. He's retweeting JMU stuff. I mean, this is a guy that seems to be bought into the JMU brand. And at the end of the day, I want to recruit guys that want to be at JMU, and these guys want to be at JMU.
I just want to say really quickly on Jalen Sanchez. I had a chance to do a smoke alarm installation event with the Red Cross and got a chance to spend a significant amount of time with Jalen. That kid's swagger speaks for itself, and he's just an energy guy. He is such a personality that you can clearly tell just in the off the field dynamics between these players that he is clearly a locker room favorite and somebody I think fans are going to really grow to appreciate as he goes throughout the season because he's got that infectious personality that you just can't teach, you can't fake. So I'm really excited to see his role continue to expand in this offense. Michael, I do want to ask you about the tight ends. This is another important room, not just from catching passes, but blocking, which for this talented running back room is going to be so key to having success on the field, but also a tight end could be a quarterback's best friend in a variety of different situations. Introduce us to this room and some of the names that fans could start to get excited about. Once again, only 20 days away from game one.
Well, I'll put a bow on the wide receivers room. Think about this. Jalen Sanchez, 77 catches, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns at Villanova. In 2023, he averaged 26 yards a catch. Think about that. And then last year, he averaged 14 yards a catch as well. So number one guy, it's Villanova. So they're always going to have some quality players there. But to your point, really excited to see what he can do. Tight ends wise, I think this is another exciting room. I feel like this is the theme of the show is like depth and players. And Logan Kyle comes in. He's got 1 year in the system, and I think he's a true deep threat for us. If anyone's played NCAA, he's probably the number one tight end in the country. If you just throw a go route, he's the first one that gets it. Josh Pfeiffer comes back. He could have went anywhere he wanted in the entire country. Brings a physical demeanor to the game. And I really like what we did with bringing in Lakota Dupree. So Lakota Dupree was a 280-pound defensive lineman for Charlotte, was actually committed to Holy Cross as a tight end many moons ago, comes to JMU, loses 25 pounds as a tight end, and I think he's just going to be that physical edge guy, right? He brings a strong demeanor. He had a really good interview with Dave Riggert, I think 2 or 3 days ago. He's 6'4", 260 pounds. He's got the physique. He's got the mental. He's got that really tough-nosed mindset. He's also from Pennsylvania. A lot of Northeast personalities, right, which I think is going to be a good thing for us. I think it's a game changer in that room. Also, we've got the kid Brian Knott from Massachusetts, who honestly right now is an oversized receiver that can really go and really get it, and some other guys as well. So once again, like versatility in the room. Do we want to block? Do we want to spread someone wide and create a matchup, maybe on 4th down, going on a fade route against a 5'9" corner? I think we've got the right athletes. So it's really cool to see what Chesney has done. I think what's exciting this time around is versus him having to re-scout the players that are coming back, he knows what's coming back, and he's very familiar with the players he's brought in. Like I mentioned, Lakota Dupree was a Holy Cross commit until maybe 2 days before National Signing Day. Charlotte comes in. I think they had a couple of decommits, and he goes there instead. So that's a kid that he's recruited for 3 or 4 years. So, but I think the best part about this is let's talk about the O-line a little bit. Like, think about some of the returners there. John, how about you? You're a Giants fan. Chris Smith, 2 years in, he was a former O-line coach over there. What are you excited about?
I wish I could say I'm a Giants fan. I am unfortunately a Jets fan, but we never really had the offensive line to be excited about.
That was the joke, by the way. For all
I know. New York's all one big state. It's all one fan base. No, I want to say, obviously, the name that stands out amongst them, and I heard Coach Jesse joke about it a couple of times, is I think Pat McMurtry's in his 20th year of college football. He's got a doctorate now he's going for. It's pretty remarkable that you can bring back, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he was the only all-conference player in the Sun Belt that is returning to his team this year, which is a pretty exciting thing in its own right, is the leadership and the intangibles he brings with somebody who didn't let up a sack last season, which is amazing to, if you're going to want a young quarterback and everything else to be successful, you having that anchor on the right side of the offensive line is huge. So he's a name that is incredibly, just exciting from a perspective of you don't have to worry about Pat. If there's a question I have about this unit just in general, is where is the depth going to come from? And that's something where, as we start to hear some of the names that have come into this roster, bringing in players again with experience, some large bodies that can weave into this unit. I know Chandler mentioned when he was up there again for his coaching clinics, that was a room that they were very excited about. There's a lot of different pieces, and versatility was a word that was used a lot by this staff, is that if there is a player that goes down, they have guys who they can plug and play in different areas. And that's the thing that I'm most excited about, because let's be honest, if this team is going to reach where we want them to go, as cliche as it is, it starts and ends with the offensive line and being able to protect your quarterback and be able to move the pile. Football's a simple game ultimately at the end of the day, and it often does come down to the health and the depth of your line.
What I'm excited about here is if we're going to continue rotating our linemen, I think we've got an advantage, particularly in the inside, right? I'm going to list off some names here. Carter Sweezy comes back. Riley Rebel comes back from injury. I think he's probably got the highest ceiling out of all of our guards. Josh Toner's been in the system for 10 years now, it feels like. He's going to be rotating at guard. Brett Davis came in as a walk-on, now as a scholarship player, 4 years into the system. I can see all of them rotating inside, brings really athletic bodies. But also, you mentioned Pat, but we brought in a 6'8", 300-pound offensive tackle in James. I'm going to butcher his last name, but Pogorelic, is that correct? Started his career out at Stanford, transfers to Duke, former 5-star offensive lineman, 6'8". Cam McNair from Holy Cross at offensive tackle, 6'5", 335, 3-year starter at Holy Cross, was a first-team All-Patriot. Once again, 6'5", 335. And then a Zach Greenberg from UNC at 6'4", 302. Started 4 years at a Division III school before he had a growth spurt allegedly at his junior year. He's now massive. He comes in at center. We've got a lot of really fun pieces here, which I think brings, once again, maturity, versatility across the line, and it probably feeds into, we're probably going to be subbing guys in and out pretty frequently too.
Well, and Taylor, I was going to ask you, one of the talking points early in last season was the rotation, and was there an advantage to that? Was there a disadvantage? One thing we saw as the season went on is our offensive line was fresh, and they had a lot of guys who, from an energy perspective, were able to bring it later in games. If there's a storyline for the season that I think this staff has made a priority, is making sure that our second half performances match our first half performances, because when we lost last year, our second halves tended to see some letdown. That's got to be exciting when you do have so many pieces, though, that knowing you can rotate guys on a consistent basis to keep guys fresh.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the one of the trademarks of a Chesney program. It seems to be one of the emphasis they had last year, and it seems to be. I mean, I forgot what the statistic was. What was the first couple of games? We saw, 12, 13 guys play in the game. I can tie this. I want to go back to the tight ends first, because, and I'll try to tie this into the O-line conversation. Is we're at a point where we're bringing in tight ends at the 235, 250 range. If you go back and look at the JMU rosters from 10 years ago. We had a lot of 225, 230, 235 guys. And if you look at the offensive line, a lot of times we had short and stocky or tall and lean. And I think
former quarterbacks turned offensive linemen. Yeah.
Although that worked out pretty well for Josh Wells. So, but I used to work at UTSA. And one of the big transitions that we noticed there, when you saw going from that, independent FCS to FBS over the years, you just saw one of the biggest differences of FCS to FBS, just the size of the offensive line and the power that you had. And that goes down, you're talking about depth and, fresh legs and stuff. I think if you see the FCS FBS games that JMU played in the past, first quarter, first half, we're kind of going toe-to-toe with a lot of these teams. And then these teams pull away in the second half. Is because they have that depth, and we're just not able to rotate. We don't have the depth of size, of athleticism and speed and size that these big programs have. Now we've developed that. We have that. Coach Chesney showed that on display last year, that he will play a lot of guys. For me, this group probably has probably the second most question marks for me, other than number one for me is probably the QB room, and not QB because I question their ability. It's just we kind of are waiting to see how that's going to play out. The offensive line, I think, has some proving to do, but I see the pieces there. It'll be a matter of executing, and we're going to see that early on against both the Weber State and Louisville team. That's kind of going to be opposite ends of the spectrum of type of competition we're going to see on the field.
Well, you talked about size, Taylor. I can't believe we haven't even brought him up. Number 79, Joe Simmons, 6'6", 330. He's going to be filling in the role at left tackle with, I think, Jesse Ramil's over at Charlotte now. Like, he's the guy, right? If you think about the most important position on the offensive line outside of maybe center is left tackle, right? We have all right-handed quarterbacks. It's the blind side. And I think seeing his development at that size, that length, that is a key role in that position. So really interested to see how he comes about and how this offensive line gels together ultimately.
And I want to add one thing is in great point from Chandler off camera was last year. Remember, our offensive line coach kind of came in right before the season started. So having somebody now who's had an off season to really weave his techniques into the fold and to get these guys up to speed, I feel like is an underrated point to this team's ultimate success. And then one thing we haven't mentioned that has been a consistent point of emphasis from everyone who's done an interview is the new strength and conditioning coach that has come in to JMU this offseason. I don't personally, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember in years past hearing this much praise for a coach that's an assistant or ever maybe that I can at least cite right now. But man, that sounds like 5 years ago or whatever, is that there has been universal praise for what he has done to help transform these guys' bodies, getting them in a position to be really successful. And that's something I know that I'm really intrigued to watch, because if your emphasis point going into the year is to make sure that you can sustain momentum in the second half, that's really where you see the strength and conditioning really become paramount in your program's focus. And it sounds like there have been tremendous strides in this area. And that's an area that I'm really excited about, looking at this team, because if your offensive line is stronger, if they are in better shape, that bodes well for the entire unit. And it sounds like we're in a really good position going into this year. Anything else to either of you about this position group that you want to put a bow on?
Well, John, I was going to say, we were talking about continuity a lot from the staff. I think Coach Grotsky's been with Chesney now for 6 or 7 years outside of last year. So he knows what Coach Chesney wants. I think all these players have these catapult systems and all of these monitors on them, so they know exactly how much they're sweating, what food they're eating. They know, I think they call it like player loads. It's fascinating, right? And I think it's really cool because you look at what Coach Chesney did at Holy Cross. Again, Patriot League organization. I think they only have 30 scholarships, limited budget, but they were maximizing these players out. A lot of these kids are now in the NFL. They were making deep runs in the playoffs. You have to think a lot of that had to do with what Coach Groutsy was doing, from the data behind it, developing players, making sure they're focused on the right pieces. I think what he loved in his interview with Dave Rigard was he's a weight room guy. He wants his kids to love the weight room. And we're bringing in Jordan Fuller at 230 pounds. Cam McNair at 335, a Matt Sluka that's been running over defenders for 4 years at Holy Cross. These are weight room guys that he wants to establish that culture. I mean, I want to see us finish games, which is obviously the big talking point at the end of last year. I think it's the perfect formula, in my opinion.
Well, I was going to ask you guys both as we kind of transition to the end of the program, though, is there a player on offense or that you look at now and go, well, maybe they're not one of the names that's getting all the hype, but is somebody that you're excited to see, or at the end of the season you think could come out of nowhere to be a conference level player of the year sort of situation, or at least get mentioned in those postseason awards? Maybe I'll go to you, Michael, because I know you've been around this roster and have had a chance to see them in person. Is there a name that you're like circling on the roster and going, I'm pretty stoked to see this person's development?
I'll be honest. I mean, I hate to say this, as this person was a former Richmond Spider, but if you look at wide receiver, I'm just pulling up his stats right now. Landon Ellis, 6'2", 213 pounds, from Orange County, Virginia. I remember him at the spring game. Number one, he was him blocking. He just blocks with this nasty demeanor. Also, he was chatting it up with the defensive guys. He was talking smack. He was getting in their face. He was telling anyone who was lined up against him, you can't guard me. And he can go and get the ball. And now when the ball's in the air in a key situation, he's got that big body, right, where he can play like a basketball player and block people out in certain routes. I think he's gonna be someone for us to watch out for. The sleeper behind him, and we haven't talked about him yet, is Zeron Collins from Tusculum. We got another Tusculum kid coming in. 6'2", 181 pounds. He's got to wear number 12 this year. I think he averaged like 27 yards a catch at Tusculum over his 2 or 3 years there. I think he's got speed we haven't seen in a while, maybe even Mikey Scott kind of level speed. Super raw, but you look at a guy where you just need to make a play and just let someone be an athlete. I think he's someone that's going to make some plays. But Landon Ellis, I think he's going to be interesting on the outside, and he's going to make some big catches for us.
Taylor, what about you?
I'm just excited for what I saw of Joby Mallory at the end of last season.
Took mine.
I don't know if he's going to be a guy that ever wins, Sun Belt Player of the Week. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that, ever leads in any one statistical category. But, in some of the B-roll footage that you've seen of the football team, he seems to just have a great working relationship with the coaches and his teammates. Always seems to have a smile on his face. But, man, he's a guy I just wouldn't want to tackle, And the end of the season, when he got to see the field a little more, he's just a guy that's been around college football for 5 or 6 years, and just seems someone who's really hungry for their chance. And I think he's going to have a significant role on this team this year and get some significant time. And I think at the end of the year, he's going to be one of those fan favorites that people really get behind.
So I'm going to go totally off the board, and I'm not even going to pick an offensive player. I'm going to pick a specialist. Because of the impact that they can have on offense. And that's our left-footed Australian kicker, Patrick Rea. And the reason I bring it up is it was an interesting stat that was out there from Preston Comer that La Tech's opponents fumbled 8 of his punts last season. And this was mentioned in some of the press remarks this week as well, is that the ball comes off his foot differently. It's a different trajectory. It's a different spin. And the reason I put that out there is because if JMU can capitalize on players struggling to game plan for a left-footed kicker, that could lead to more possessions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have more possessions than the other team, you're probably going to be winning more of those games. So that's something I'm excited to see, is just special teams improvement across the board and what impact that can have on the offensive side of the football. There's a lot of other names I know we could all mention. That's something that you could get involved as fans of this program. Let us know in the comments. Let us know below, like, who are some of the names you're excited about, because I'm sure there are names that we're not talking about on programs like this and in the interviews that we all watch each and every week that are going to have breakouts and be integral to the success of this program. Guys, anything just kind of high level before we kind of transition towards previewing what we got next week that you want to mention?
Do you guys remember when we played like Villanova and Maine, and they were never the most talented teams, but they found ways to kind of just like stick around. Like, they had these tough guys all the time, and they just never backed down. I have a feeling this team kind of has some of that, right? Obviously, this Chesney and them, they're from the Northeast. They brought in a lot of these Jersey guys, PA guys. But like, as I hear them talk, as I look at their resumes and where they've played, I get that feeling. We're gonna go in most of these games. Maybe not the most talented. Who knows? Maybe, but they're all gonna have a chip on their shoulder. They're like tough guys that want to win, that want to prove themselves. I think we're gonna have that edge this year. I'm not saying last year we didn't, but last year I think we started at the start of the show. I think we were just trying to fill in bodies, right? Do we have enough corners? Do we have enough linemen? Do we have enough quarterbacks? All of that. I think this year it's like we wanted tough guys that have a chip on their shoulder, that wanted to prove themselves. I think we're going to see that edge. I just have this feeling we're going to be a tough, put the ball on the ground 2 yards and
with all those holes, we went 9-4 and won a bowl game. I mean, 3 years ago, we had podcasts like us saying, hey, JMU fans, it might take a few years to get a winning record. And now, with a transitioning coaching staff, trying to fill the holes, just trying to get personnel in positions, 9-4 and a bowl win. I mean, that's why this coaching staff deserves your respect and your confidence until they give you a reason otherwise.
Well, and think about how angry we were during the season with some of the games that we lost because we had leads. I mean, I'm just going to go right back to the App State game. You're thinking, man, we're going to blow the doors off them. And obviously, you have to do it on the field, but the talent was there, the ability was there, and now the familiarity point. And that is the thing that I'm most excited about this roster is not only is this staff nowhere to go to the grocery store. They're not living in an apartment together or a house off campus. They're settled. They know what talent they have on this roster, and they were able to recruit to the holes. And that familiarity is going to allow for them to game plan. And we've heard it on multiple occasions so far in fall camp. Jalen Sanchez mentioned that this roster is so much further ahead than any group he's personally been a part of during his time as a college football player. That is going to pay huge dividends as you go for this season, because they're able to install things earlier. There's just a continuity and chemistry that last season took a lot longer to gel. And I have often thought that the teams that gel quicker are the teams that you're going to see standing at the end of the season, because they're just firing all cylinders. And this is a group, if they can answer some of the legitimate questions that are out there. There are questions about quarterback. There are questions about who's going to be under center. And let's be honest, football tends to start and end with success at that position. If we can get success out of that group, I really do think the hype is justified. And yeah, we're as maybe biased of a podcast in terms of JMU supporters, but this time I think it's as justified as it could possibly be when you look at the ingredients that are there. And there's a lot that still has to be polished in the next 20 days, but a lot to be excited about. Gentlemen, any last final thoughts before we kind of preview what we got next week?
All right. I'll share this, John. I mean, I want to plug Rigard. I want to plug all these amazing other, podcasts you can listen to. Anytime you listen to an interview, if they interview any of these new players in an age of NIL, in the age of a transfer portal window, all of this, everyone said they wanted to come here to win. They want to be part of a winning program. The recent interview with Charlotte, Lakota Dupree goes, he hated losing. He lost 2 games in high school and had 2 or 3 losing seasons at Charlotte. He wanted to come to a program to win. So in an age of all these money bags getting thrown around, people leaving and coming and going, people still want to go to a winning program with a solid culture, and that's JMU.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, the elephant in the room is obviously the question mark at quarterback, and I think we, as JMU fans, we've got to realize the last 10 years, I think every person that's lined up under center at JMU, when they finish their careers, got invited to an NFL camp at the least. We've been very spoiled at quarterback, and so having that uncertainty going into the season, you have Zoe's injury, Sluka, he's kind of bounced around. Where is he? Can the FCS Richmond, can that transfer up here? How is JC Evans? But again, I guess the comfort I have is there have been times where if it's not this guy, we don't have a replacement. For me, it's like there are 3, 4, you could even go as far as stretch to say 5 guys that could line up under center and have the quality of what you'd expect at a Sun Belt quarterback. And so I think this coaching staff, I just have all the confidence in the world that they're going to be able to work that out, put the right persons under center. But until we get to that first week in that first game, that's going to be kind of the most unsettling thing for JMU fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And just final to wrap it, maybe one more point on the coaching staff is it's our coach's happy birthday today. It's his birthday, Coach Chesney. We sang a little happy birthday on the social channels. So thank you, first of all, everyone who indulged me in participating in that last night. But happy birthday, Coach Chesney. And just again, we just kind of center this at the end of this conversation, wishing all the best of the players as they continue to go through fall camp. We know it's a grind. Wishing everybody good health and let's get to game 1 with everybody available. I know that's a key. Gentlemen, it's just great to be back for another season of JMU Sound Off. To preview next week, we're going to look at the defensive side of the football, because there are a ton of storylines to get to. We're going to break down each of the positions, some of the names to watch. We'll also have another off-topic conversation. Want to continue to encourage you to involve yourself in our program. Our show is better with your input, your questions, your feedback. So if you want to see something from us next week as we break down the defense, let us know on X, on YouTube, on Twitter. There's many different places, Facebook, that you can get involved with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That simple step really matters in helping us to grow this platform, helping us to continue to reach more audiences. If you're somebody that's on TikTok, we're there now as well. Many different places that you can come and interact with our content because we want to hear from you. So smash that like button, share with your friends who are in the JMU universe who might want to listen to some great JMU talk, and continue to support the other podcasts that are out there as well. It's a great community. You have many choices to get your JMU coverage, and just know that we are always grateful. We never take you for granted. Want to thank our sponsors once again, from Skyline Financial Partners, Champions Drive, Where's Woody, Your Purple Nation, Shoker Enterprises, the Dead Meat Society, Outdoor Kitchen Solutions. This is a new group this year that allows us to do this show, and the fact that we're bringing in more sponsors, hopefully, is a sign of the growth that continues to happen with this platform, and that only happens because you listen. Gentlemen, any final thoughts before we wrap?
A lot of giveaways this year. So the kind of the interaction, we're going to be doing stuff at games. We're going to be doing stuff on social media. So like John said, make sure to engage because we're going to have a lot of stuff to do for fans.
Yeah, that is for sure. Some giveaways. We're going to be highlighting some of the best tailgaters out in JMU universe. I know our friends from Outdoor Kitchen Creations want to do some stuff with some recipes. We've got some great products from Where's Woody we're going to highlight as well. So lots of good things. I want to thank, again, Afton Sadamon for his support all summer long. I want to also give a shout out, first of all, Steve Brown waits till retirement to get a water slide in his backyard. So we didn't get a pool party invite this year. So Steve, you got to have us over for that. And again, everyone who continues to contribute, it's greatly appreciated. Very big shout out to Chandler Fortune, helped to make this show run smoothly. As always, we appreciate you, Chandler, even though he doesn't want to be on camera today. So I understand. We'll get him on for future episodes. With that, gentlemen, we will be back next week. As always, continue to follow our accounts. Continue to visit jmusoundoff.com for the latest news related to our program. And as always, we will talk to you next week. Another exciting week of JMU sports ahead. And we're going to break it all down on JMU Sound Off. Go Dukes.